Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me today. I have a Christmas card project for you today, and it's using old material and new material. So I'm using my curvy dies, and then I'm also using the brightly gleaming designer series paper that carried over from last year. I bet you've got some in your stash. And so this is a little bit back to your stash and a little bit new. So let's just get started. Okay, here is my card. I have used this beautiful designer series paper. Here's a larger piece of it that has the Pretty Peacock in the background, and then the scroll work on it, the design is in copper. Isn't that gorgeous? So this is the card I've come up with. I can't stay away from these curvy dies. I just love the effect that it has. So I started with a Pretty Peacock base that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. And then I have a piece of this beautiful DSP that is cut 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside. And on this one, I just put a plain piece of white, thinking that this border here would be all the decoration I needed, but I decided it's a little boring. So what I did was I used my curvy dies to cut my edge this way, and then I turned it around and got it to cut another edge for me this way. And it's not perfect, but you kind of get the idea, and it fits in here with just the tiniest margin on either side, and I think it's just as cute as it can be with that kind of curvy thing, and it brings sort of the inside of the card, the outside of the card to the inside. Okay, then I have 3 pieces of cardstock. This is my vellum piece, and it's the longest, so I went ahead and cut it the full length of the front of my card. So it is cut 5.5 by 4 1/4, since that is going to be the largest piece on here. Next is the copper, and I think I ended up cutting this one about 3 1/2 by, again, 5 1/2. And you could cut this a little bit shorter, but I wanted it to feel not like there was kind of an edge that fell off. So I did cut it probably a little bit longer. You might be able to get away with one that was a little narrower here and still have it have the same effect. Then I cut the shortest piece, which was my designer series paper, again 5 1/2, so it goes all the way across the card. And then I think I cut this one down to, yep, like 3 1/2, just a piece that's 3 1/2 will more than do what you want it to do. So then I have 3 other pieces here. I have a piece of vellum that is 1 inch by 3 1/2 inches, and then a piece of Pretty Peacock that is 3 3/4 by 1 1/4, and then I have a piece of copper that's 1 1/2 by 3 3/4. So these 2 pieces fit right on top of one another, but there is no margin on either side. I thought that looked best. I tried it both ways and I decided this was better. And then I have my piece of vellum to stamp my image. So stamping. What we need to do on this is stamp on the vellum in both cases. And so I used from the Curvy Christmas, May Your Days Be Merry and Bright. And because this is a photopolymer stamp, you can make this stamp, curve any which way you want. But I set mine down here so that it would kind of sit in the middle and follow this curve along here. So let's see, I need my pierce mat, And then I had a piece of scratch paper. And I noticed in the catalog, and I just noticed it, that Stampin' Up! Is no longer selling the Pierce mat. So you can use the foam mat that comes from the Stamparatus supplies, and it can be purchased separately, and that will work. A piece of fun foam will work. A mouse pad will work. Anything that's got a little bit of a cushion for your stamps. So I've got my Pretty Peacock ink here and my stamp. I'm going to ink that up really well all the way across here and set this down so that I'm eyeballing it from side to side and having it follow basically along this curve. So that's where I'm going to stamp it, and we'll find out how well I did here in just a second. So I'm going to let that sit on there for just a second. And then ink takes a little bit longer to dry on these vellum pieces. Oh, isn't that pretty? So may your days be merry and bright. I think that came out just fine. As long as we're doing our stamping, maybe I'll go ahead and stamp this one as well. And that one, I used the Merry Christmas stamp from the Poinsettia Petals stamp set. I just love the font on this one. And so I'm going to stamp my Merry Christmas right across the center of that one, putting even pressure all the way along. And again, I'm going to let that sit for just a second, and then I will take that off, and there we go. Nice images. Okay, so I'm going to set both of these aside here for just a second to let those dry a little bit and let that ink get good and dry. Meanwhile, we can go ahead and complete the inside of our card. So here we have our two pieces, and I'm going to use my seal to put some glue down on the back of my designer series paper and set that into place on the inside of my card, just like that. Then I've got this piece, and I'm going to do the same. I'm going to set my glue down following the curve. Oh, it's out. Okay, I refilled my seal, and I'm going to finish putting some glue here on my white panel. Now this panel was big enough that it went all the way across from one side to the other, and you know, I think even though this is not something I would recommend that you do, but I am going to cut a little piece of that off because I want some of that pretty paper to show on either side. So I know these edges are straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 1/2 inch off of this, and I'm going to set it down on my 1/2 inch mark, and then I'll have to clean my glue up later off of this piece. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that down by a 1/2 inch. And I will have a gluey mess on my trimmer, but a little alcohol and a baby wipe will take care of that. So now I've got my piece here, and now I can have a margin on either side of this piece showing off my pretty paper and just showing a little bit here and a little bit there. And there we've got the inside of our card decorated. Oh, I'm so much happier with that. Very, very nice. I'm pleased with that. All right, now back to putting our pieces together. So we have our stamped pieces that are now, I think, pretty dry. And So this vellum piece is going to be on the bottom. The next piece that's going to go into place is the copper. So I need to place this copper piece down here, leaving a bit of the margin for the stamped image. And I'm going to go ahead and add my seal. All right. So I'm going to try to line these two edges up here and get that so that it's showing just the right amount of the stamped area down below. And there we go. All right, and then the next thing will be to do that same thing with my designer series paper. And I'm going to do exactly that same thing. I don't need a lot of this copper to show, but I'm going to line up this edge so that my 3 cut edges will be the same. Now, so what did I do to get my 3 cut edges the same? What I did was I used my curvy die, and when I set it up on my piece of paper, I set it up to go right up against. This is the cutting edge on the bottom, so I made sure that that was on the right side. And then this has a flat edge on one side. So as long as I set that up so that that flat edge is on up against the end, I should be able to get the same cut. What I would suggest if you do this card, that you cut your copper separately and then you cut your designer series paper and your vellum together. And that way you've got the best chance of getting exactly the exact same curvature. And if you cut your copper first, then you can use it as a guide when you put these other 2 pieces together and set this down. Now, if you want to tape this particular die in place, I found that the tape left marks on the copper. So even though it's going to cut it off when it runs through, I ran the tape around and only put it on the die and the back side of the paper to hold it in place when I ran it through my machine. And that way I didn't get any glue or funny stuff on my copper. And then on these 2 pieces of paper, it didn't matter because I could just peel that piece of washi tape off and it was just fine. So there we go. All right, so now I'm going to take my card base and I'm going to set this down. Now I don't want this right against the bottom edge because the glue on this is really going to be from here up. So I don't want it to catch when people open this card. So I'm going to set that up on the card just a little bit, and that's going to be perfect. Now I may have a little bit of trimming to do from the back side, but that's just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glue right down here on the bottom of my card and right up here at the top of the vellum, and then 1 stripe down the middle. And I'm going to start by setting this where I want it on the bottom, and then okay, it looks like I had an interruption with my camera. So where I left it off, I believe I was at the place that I was putting these pieces on here. And I'm going to point out something that I did here that wasn't right. I ended up putting it on and then trimming it to fit on this card front. And when I turned it over, I realized that the margin on my copper on this side was smaller than the margin on this side. And as a result of that, I'll probably end up taking this apart and redoing that. But the idea is to put them on with the same margin, trim off to fit. Then I took my 2 pieces, my copper and my Pretty Peacock piece, and glued them together and then glued them into place on the card front. Then I placed these 2 large pearls, and I colored these pearls with my dark Pretty Peacock blends on these giant pearls, and then put them into place on the piece of vellum that had been stamped. Then turned it over, and then I took my glue dots and I folded the glue dots over once in half, and then again over to cut it, take this half piece and have it folded over on itself again, so that I ended up with a piece that is about the quarter of the glue dot. And I placed that on my vellum piece. Let me show you. I'll just grab a little piece of vellum and we'll put one of these pearls down on here. And then what I did was I turned this over and I put this glue dot right down here on this piece of vellum, and then that's how I stuck my piece of vellum down here. I got that into place right where I want it and pushed down on both of those pearls, and now you can't see any of the way that was adhered to the card. And that was just about it. I used a couple more of those pearls on the ends here to hold down the vellum pieces and added one more in the center. This will be pretty easy to fix. I'm going to probably peel off this piece and cut another one and put it on here so that it fits a little bit better. And I have a similar margin across here, and then that one will be fixed. So that is it. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. Joining Stampin' Up! I think is always a good idea. In fact, a lot of my customers buy enough each month that they would have no trouble meeting their minimums as a demonstrator. And then, you know, for the best value, first of all, your kit only costs $99 and you get $125 worth of product. Second of all, you get a 20% discount on everything you order. And so you can be doing just exactly what you're doing now, but get 20% off. So if you're curious at all, give me a holler. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Otherwise, I'm afraid people are leaving money on the table. And let's see, this is November, and my prize draw is a $60 shopping spree on me. And how you get yourself in the drawing is placing an order of any size on my store, lbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get to it through my blog, www.inkingingenuity.com. Let's see, so that's it for me. We're getting ready. Another perk is I've already seen the upcoming catalog and had a chance to order some of the new stuff, so I'll be back on a couple times. In fact, I'm going to do an extra one on Sunday where I'm going to share some swaps that people have been sending me, and we'll have an opportunity to look at some absolutely gorgeous Christmas cards, and you can get a bunch of ideas from there as well. Well, that's it for me. I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye.